December 21st, 2024. Sham Shui Po District, Hong Kong. Yao Sai unlocks a metal cage at 11 p.m. after his shift at a food factory in Tsuen Wan, carefully ducking his head as he climbs inside. The cage measures 4 feet wide, 4 feet tall, 6 feet long. Smaller than the parking space his boss uses, smaller than the prison cell his neighbor once occupied. Around him in this single apartment, 18 other men and women unlock their own cages, stacking 3 high against the walls like shipping containers in a warehouse. The temperature inside hovers at 93 degrees Fahrenheit, even with the windows open. 20 people share one toilet down the hall. Yao pays 2,000 Hong Kong dollars a month for this privilege, about $256 US, which represents a third of his entire income. This isn't a prison. This isn't a refugee camp. This is permanent housing in one of the wealthiest cities on planet Earth, a global financial center where the second highest number of billionaires in the world live within a few miles of Yao's cage. Right now, 220,000 people in Hong Kong live this way. That's roughly 3% of the entire population sleeping in spaces designed for storage, not humans. And the waiting list to escape? 5.5 years. The Chinese Civil War created this nightmare. Between 1951 and 1961, Hong Kong's population exploded from 2 million to 3.1 million people as refugees fled mainland China. That's a 50% increase in 10 years, and the British colonial government couldn't build housing fast enough to handle the surge. Landlords in districts like Mong Kok and Sham Shui Po came up with a solution. They took old tenement apartments and filled them with metal bunk beds surrounded by wire mesh, stacking them 2 and 3 high. The cages were meant for single working men who needed the cheapest possible option while they saved money. The rental fee was low. The conditions were temporary. That was 1958. Hong Kong transformed around these cages. The skyline grew, the economy boomed, the territory became a global financial powerhouse. In 2018, the city had 67 billionaires with a combined wealth of 335 billion Hong Kong dollars. Property prices climbed so high that Hong Kong earned the title of world's least affordable housing market 12 consecutive years running. And the cages, they never went away. By 2007, approximately 53,200 people still lived in cage homes. The government passed the Bed Space Apartments Ordinance back in 1994 to regulate these places, requiring landlords to obtain special licenses if they operated apartments with 12 or more sleeping spaces. The law addressed fire safety and sanitation. It did not address the fundamental issue of humans, so landlords adapted. They installed exactly 11 beds per apartment to avoid the licensing requirement. Problem solved, at least for the people collecting rent. Today, only 9 licensed bed space apartments officially exist in Hong Kong. 6 in Yau Tsim Mong District, 1 each in Central and Western Eastern and Sham Shui Po. But social workers know the truth. Hundreds of unlicensed cage homes operate across the city, invisible to government records, housing thousands of people who have nowhere else to go. If this seems impossible in 2024, wait until you see the rent prices. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Cage homes represent just one category in Hong Kong's hierarchy of desperation. The city's housing crisis has spawned an entire taxonomy of misery. There are cage homes, coffin homes, cubicle homes, and subdivided flats. More than 110,000 subdivided units exist across Hong Kong, carved out of larger apartments and rented to people who can't afford anything better. Siomei lives in a 100-square-foot subdivided flat in Mong Kok with her 7-year-old son and her 70-year-old mother. The space is too small for a separate kitchen, so she cooks dinner in the living room while her son does homework on a massage bed. The bathroom measures 10 square feet, barely enough room to stand. After the adults eat at a small foldable table, the boy has his meal on the bed with laundry hanging overhead to dry. Their rent? 4,500 Hong Kong dollars monthly, about $575 US for 100 square feet. The average subdivided flat runs 48 square feet, smaller than the average American bathroom. Rent ranges from 3,000 to 6,500 Hong Kong dollars per month, depending on location and whether you get your own toilet. And here's what makes this particularly cruel. On a per square foot basis, these desperate spaces cost more than luxury apartments in some of Hong Kong's wealthiest neighborhoods. Over 60% of these units concentrate in Kowloon, particularly in Sham Shui Po, one of the poorest yet most rapidly gentrifying districts. The new territories contains another 24%. The rest scatter across Hong Kong Island. 50,000 children under 18 years old are growing up in these conditions right now. Not adults who made bad choices, not elderly people at the end of their lives, kids. 1 in 4 children living in subdivided units experiences food insecurity. 25% of children aged 6 to 8 in these homes are overweight or obese, nearly double the citywide average, while at the same time nearly 1 in 4 children from infancy to age 17 are underweight. The typical residents include low-income workers, the elderly, people with physical or mental disabilities, drug users, and new immigrants. That last category faces a particularly cruel trap. New immigrants to Hong Kong must wait 7 years to become permanent residents before they qualify for public housing, so they spend those 7 years in cages, waiting for bureaucracy to process their applications while paying rent that keeps them poor. July 2021. Xia Baolong, Beijing's top official on Hong Kong affairs, arrived in the city for an inspection tour. What he saw apparently shocked him enough to issue a public statement. Hong Kong, he said, must eradicate its deep-rooted problems in housing. The cage homes, the coffin homes, the subdivided flats, all of it needed to disappear. And he gave the city a deadline: 2049. 28 years to solve a problem that started in 1958. 70 years to fix what was supposed to be temporary. The Hong Kong government responded by forming a task force in 2023, because nothing says urgency like forming a committee. Then in October 2024, Chief Executive John Lee announced new regulations. Subdivided flats smaller than 8 square meters would be phased out starting in 2026. These units would need windows, individual toilets. They'd be renamed basic housing units, as if changing the terminology changed the reality. Cage homes, specifically? Those wouldn't fall under the new legislation. They'd remain regulated by that same 1994 ordinance landlords had been circumventing for 30 years. The human cost accumulates in hospital records and mental health clinics across Hong Kong. Residents of subdivided units suffer from respiratory diseases because more than half of these spaces contain indoor air pollution exceeding World Health Organization standards. Poor ventilation traps mold, creates breeding grounds for bacteria. The heat causes dehydration and heat-related illness in spaces where temperatures climb to 93 degrees Fahrenheit with no cooling systems. Crystal Ying Chan, a research assistant professor at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, conducted a comprehensive study on families in subdivided housing. Her findings painted a devastating picture. Half of the surveyed households reported their children experienced food insecurity in the past year. Parents were choosing between rent and groceries in one of the world's wealthiest cities. The mental health toll runs deeper. Research from Hong Kong Jockey Club's Disaster Preparedness and Response Institute surveyed 104 households in subdivided flats in Kwai Tsing district. 7 residents showed symptoms of anxiety, depression, and stress. 9 developed mental distress specifically after moving into subdivided flats. 2 received formal diagnoses of mental disorders. Some elderly residents described their existence in words that cut deep. They're waiting for death. Then there's the fire risk. These buildings are death traps, narrow escape routes, corridors blocked with residents' belongings because there's nowhere else to store them. Faulty wiring running through spaces designed to hold a fraction of the current occupancy. Just before Christmas one year, a fire in a bedspace apartment killed 7 people and injured 50 more. Fire officers arrived to find corridors and staircases blocked with rubbish and shopping trolleys. All of this unfolds against a backdrop of staggering wealth inequality. Hong Kong's Gini coefficient hit 0.539 in 2016, the highest level in 45 years. Compare that to Canada at 0.318, the United Kingdom at 0.351, even the United States at 0.391. Hong Kong's richest 0.001% account for over half of the city's income. That's a larger share than any country in the world. Between 2008 and 2018, Hong Kong's billionaire count more than doubled from 26 to 67 individuals. Their combined wealth nearly tripled from 135 billion to 335 billion Hong Kong dollars. During that same period, the number of people in cage homes barely budged. Nearly half of Hong Kong's population, about 3.5 million people, already lives in some form of public housing. The waiting list stretches 5.5 years on average. Over 230,300 applications sit in the queue. Between mid-2022 and mid-2024, the government recovered 5,000 public housing units from wealthy tenants who'd exceeded income limits and were supposed to vacate. 5,000 units reclaimed from people who didn't need them, while 250,000 slept in cages. The United Nations Economic and Social Council called cage homes an insult to human dignity. They declared the Hong Kong government's inaction unacceptable in the face of abundant financial resources. Hong Kong's fiscal reserves stood at 591 billion Hong Kong dollars in November 2024. The money exists, the political will does not. Hong Kong's grand solution takes the form of the Northern Metropolis, a massive development project announced in 2021. The plan covers 30,000 hectares in the northern New Territories bordering Shenzhen, about 1/3 of Hong Kong's total area. The government envisions housing 2.5 million people there by 2041, creating a new urban center that would fundamentally reshape the territory. In the next 5 years, they plan to complete 60,000 housing units involving 10 new public rental housing estates. The following 5 years would add another 150,000 units. There's also the Khao Yi Chau Artificial Islands project, a $75 billion land reclamation scheme creating 3 new islands in the ocean with residential units, business districts, sports facilities. First residential units on the artificial islands, expected in 2033. Full completion of Northern Metropolis, 2041. Meanwhile, Yao Sai still unlocks his metal cage every night in Sham Shui Po. Mrs. Chan, now 62, still lives in her 100-square-foot subdivided flat where her bed doubles as her dining table. Children still grow up breathing polluted air in spaces smaller than prison cells while their parents choose between rent and food. Other cities solved this. Singapore houses 80% of its population in public housing that people actually want to live in. Vienna's social housing program is so successful that middle-class families compete for units. The solutions exist. Hong Kong knows what works. The barrier isn't technical. Business elites hold disproportionate power in Hong Kong's Legislative Council. They block policies that might harm their economic interests, including aggressive public housing construction that could lower property values. The government maintains a fiscally conservative stance, keeping public expenditure on social welfare below other developed economies despite having nearly $600 billion sitting in fiscal reserves. Property prices in Hong Kong average 13,755 Hong Kong dollars per square foot. The median home price runs 17 to 19 times the median annual household income. For 12 consecutive years, Hong Kong has ranked as the world's least affordable housing market. And every year those rankings come out, developers and landlords smile because those sky-high prices are exactly what keeps their profits soaring. The cage homes aren't a failure of Hong Kong's system. They're a feature, a natural consequence of a city that treats housing as an investment vehicle rather than a human right. December 21st, 2024. Same building in Sham Shui Po where we started. Yao Sai lies in his cage, legs bent because there's no room to stretch them straight. In the cage above him, another man reads by the light of his phone. Down the hall, someone uses the toilet that serves 20 people. The temperature hasn't dropped below 85 degrees all night. There was a man named Yao, different from our Yao Sai, who lived in a cage for decades. Orphaned at 14 when his parents starved to death during World War II, he worked in a bookshop and loved reading Chinese literature. His dream was simple: an individual public housing unit and a room full of books. He collected books when he could afford them, storing them with a social organization because his cage had no room. He died 2 years before his name reached the top of the waiting list. In 2024, children are being born into cage homes who will be in their mid-20s before the government's 2049 deadline arrives. A quarter century from now, Hong Kong promises these spaces will finally be gone, a century after they first appeared as temporary housing. The question was never whether Hong Kong could afford to fix this. The city has the second highest number of billionaires in the world. The question was always whether it valued human dignity more than property values. 70 years of cages suggests an answer.